So, dear friends, we are once again back in the middle of June, and it's nice to see that our schools and institutions have started. People are waiting for rains, and unfortunately, they are predicting that perhaps rains might be delayed and there might be a water scarcity, etc. We pray for all these things. At the same time, sometimes we read in the newspapers that there might be a sort of tsunami on the southern coast, which is very frightful for us. We shall pray for all these things that perhaps from which God has to protect us. I take you to the message of this weekend or this Sunday, and it's the 11th Sunday of the year. There's a beautiful message. God takes care of His people. It's interesting to note how God takes care of His people. God doesn't abandon us. The first reading from the book of Exodus has got a beautiful sentence. You are my treasured possession. The meaning of this word. We use it very rarely. For a person that I love so much, I say that you are my treasured possession. Of course, some things could be treasured also. I have a gold necklace or perhaps a beautiful watch, which is my treasured possession. But more than that, persons are important. And so God assures His people that He will take care of them. In the second reading of the Romans also, St. Paul tells us that Jesus died not when we were good, when we were sinners. Anyone can die for a normal person, a good person, but to die for someone who is known to you as your enemy, as one who has hurt you, as one who has kicked you out of your life, that is great. And says, remember that Jesus loved you when you were sinners. In the gospel, beautiful gospel, where Jesus begins, or rather, His ministry begins by looking at the people. And He tells the disciples, have compassion on them, because they are like sheep without a shepherd. And not only that, we need more and more shepherds. We need more and more people who work in the harvest, because the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And in this context, Jesus chooses His first apostles. Rather, perhaps He must be testing them from some time. He sends them out on a mission. He asks them to heal the sick, etc. And today He names the 12 apostles that Jesus has appointed. It means much. When a person takes someone to be his associate, in this corporate world, they would make every type of test of trust, the test of efficiency, the trust of worthiness in order to carry on these particular works. I just can't think what test Jesus could have done, because all these disciples would have failed on every count. They were not educated. Perhaps they were not that good enough for accounts, except for Matthew, who perhaps knew how to count the money and make profits. The most of them were fishermen. Besides their nets and their boats, I don't think they knew anything. I don't even think that they have traveled much. But the greatest thing about Jesus is He does not choose people who are equipped, who are great, who are proficient, but He equips those whom He has selected. And what His selection is perhaps what we could say the lowest or the leftover selection, which no one else would have taken. Jesus takes them and equips them with His own Spirit. It's a long, long training, which is complete at the time of the resurrection of Jesus, and Pentecost is the crowning moment. So Jesus chooses His apostles. Of course, the first one is Peter. His name is Simon. And Jesus sort of changes the names in order to represent their character. Peter means rock. And then, of course, we have Andrew, his brother, who was also perhaps very much close to Peter, but then now becomes close to Jesus. We have also the James, who is called the elder. In fact, after the resurrection of Jesus, it's the James who presides over the first council meetings. And then we have John, his brother. And John perhaps was the youngest, and he's the one who stands besides the cross. Philip, he is called the introducer. That means he calls people and they come to him and he takes them to Jesus. There are some Greeks who come, he takes them to Jesus. There is that at the multiplication of the loaves, when there's nobody, no solution, Philip comes to know that this boy has got something and he brings them to Jesus. Bartholomew, perhaps one of the strange characters. Because of him it is said the one who is no guile, who doesn't know how to hide, who doesn't know how to tell lies also. Bartholomew. Thomas, of course, is very much known to us as one who was selected by Jesus, but at the same time his demands were too much. After the resurrection of Jesus, when all the disciples told him, we have seen Jesus, he doesn't believe. Unless I see his fingers, I put my fingers into his side and I touch him and I see him, etc. And St. Thomas gives us the biggest prayer, the most beautiful prayer, my Lord and my God. And St. Thomas, as you know, came to India. We are proud to be called as the ones who are followers of St. Thomas in his faith. There's also the Matthew, Apostle Matthew, who was the tax collector, and overnight he changes and comes close to Jesus. We have also James, who is called Alphaeus, son of Alphaeus. We have also another apostle who is called Thaddeus. We have the church of St. Jude, Thaddeus in our archdiocese in one or two places. And then Simon, who is the zealot. By the name zealot itself, you can make out perhaps he was like a political leader and aspired to be. Unfortunately, his dreams were shattered when he joined Jesus because Jesus' kingdom was something else. And finally, Judas Iscariot. Some asked this question, why did Jesus choose Judas, knowing very much that he would betray him? But that was Jesus. That he didn't leave out anyway. He didn't discriminate anyone, even if he knew that he would betray him, because the betrayal of Judas was also part of the redemptive work of Jesus. Perhaps someone had to do this bad thing so that Jesus is glorified. And as we see the history and the Bible itself, how Jesus was glorified, and he didn't lose, as it were, anything by this betrayal. So, my dear brothers and sisters, what's the message for today? God takes care of us if we trust him. And it's not only that, God also chooses us for something. Each one of us. It's not only the priests and religious, the bishops that are chosen. God chooses us for something that perhaps no one else in the world can do. That's the mission that we are called upon to recognize it and to ask God's grace to follow it in our life. I wish you a good Sunday, because with this beautiful message, I'm sure you'll ask the Lord that you be the protected or the treasured one of the Lord.